Hi everyone, Jamie Humphries here for Six String Alliance, and today we are taking a look at the latest pedal from Wampler. This is the newly released Golden Jubilee Overdrive and Distortion pedal. So we're going to take a look at the latest pedal from Wampler, which is the Golden Jubilee pedal, which was released last week. Now, Wampler approached me. I do a lot of demos for Wampler. I'm a big fan of Wampler pedals and had a very, very long relationship with them. And they approached me about doing this demo. And then all of a sudden, I had an unexpected tour come in right after Christmas. I had a couple of weeks to prepare, and then I was off to Canada. And I spent 3 weeks in Canada rehearsing with the Brit Floyd and then kicking off leg one of their North American tour playing in Canada. I then had to come back for some commitments that I couldn't get out of. And then I leave again next week. I fly out to America to continue on the tour for another month. So it's been a pretty intense time for me since Christmas. So sadly, I wasn't able to make the launch of this pedal and said to Wampler that I just physically do not have the time, but they were willing to wait and said that they still wanted me to look at it. So here we are today looking at their brand new Golden Jubilee pedal. Now, Wampler are known for their amp in a box style pedals, but this is not one of those, although you might confuse it and think it is one of those. This pedal isn't actually based on a particular circuit, if you like, that mimics a classic amplifier. What this pedal is doing is giving you two independent channels with an overdrive, which is very much voiced in the sort of high gain British style. So we're talking Marshall amps, anything from a Plexi up to a more hot rodded Marshall that you might associate with 80s hard rock and metal, whilst the distortion is very much voiced after the distortion sound of a boutique American brand, Mesa Boogie. In fact, that has the real characteristics of a Mark II or a Mark III Boogie. So although it's not a specific amp in a box and the circuits aren't really based on anything in particular, if you think of those two sounds and think of 80s hard rock guitar, think of Marshall amps of the 80s, think of Mesa Boogies from the 80s, then that is what you are going to get with this pedal. So what we have here is a compact pedal that houses both of these individual and very unique sounding circuits. The layout of the pedal is reflected across both of the channels. So we have a level, a tone, and a gain for either the overdrive channel or the distortion channel. And we can activate those if I push here. The orange light is your overdrive channel and the red light is the distortion channel. Now, both of the channels have a character switch and they work in a very different way depending on what channel you are on. When you're on the overdrive channel, which is the Marshall-y sounding channel, when you engage the character switch, there's a little bit of tone stuff going on, but it's mainly about the clipping. You're going to get more compression. It's going to sound a little bit spongier, a little bit tighter, and it's going to increase the gain. With that compression, you will have to adjust the level if you're going between having the character switch off and engaging it. But that was the setting that I gravitated towards, having that character switch engaged. Now, the character switch for the distortion side is very different. It's not affecting the gain, but it's affecting the EQ. Now, when the character switch is off, when you start to play around with the tone control, as you're kind of keeping it in the middle and pulling it back, you're going to notice some things going on with the mid-range. In other words, if you pull it back a bit, you actually start to scoop the mids, and that gives you that sound that we associate with, say, a Mark II C+. Again, just a ballpark example. But when you engage the character switch, you get a little bit more of a hump with the mid-range. Now, as well as that, there's also a switch for stacking the overdrive and distortion. So you can have both of them on at the same time, and you can either feed the overdrive into the distortion or the distortion into the overdrive. Now, I sort of thought about pushing the higher gain stage, the distortion stage, with the overdrive, and that would be a sound that I would gravitate towards more. And that did sound great, but I was also really surprised at the sounds that I got from stacking the distortion into the overdrive. Now, although I've already put my track together, the intro track, it's recorded and filmed, it's mixed, it's mastered, it's edited. Since filming and recording that, I've had more time playing around with the pedal and actually discovered more and thought, crap, I wish I'd recorded with this tone. I wish I'd understood that a little bit better. So this pedal is pretty deep and it really gives you two very musical channels, the overdrive channel or the distortion channel. And of course, when you combine them, you can come up with a whole host of different tones. Now, as well as the tonal capabilities that are crammed within this compact pedal, visually, I think it's really striking with that sort of classic British racing green, if you like, and the gold controls. It's a really beautiful pedal. If, like me, you are someone who, I don't need another pedal. Okay, yes, I do. It's a really striking pedal for you to add to your collection. So let's just talk a little bit about the intro track. I was very much inspired by classic new wave of British heavy metal. Although the track isn't a direct kind of Iron Maiden sound-alike, it's definitely very much inspired by Iron Maiden and that period, mid to late 80s period of British heavy metal. What I tried to do with the track was to use as many of the different combinations of tones and the controls that I could in a track. We start off with some little clean, slightly pushed chords where I was using the overdrive with the gain quite low. And then I played some atmospheric licks over the top of that, and I was using the distortion channel again with the gain quite low. So you can get some very nice, subtle and musical tones even when the gain is pulled down. So just kind of showcasing that this isn't just a one-trick pony of a pedal. Into the first riff, I was using the overdrive channel trying to go for that classic sort of higher gain Marshall. I had the character switch engaged. Although I was experimenting with the gain, I didn't want to have it too saturated. For the next riff, I was using the Distortion channel. I was going for a little bit more of a scooped high gain tone for that heavier riff. And then into the sort of first chorus section, if you like, I stuck with that high gain tone, but then I introduced a lead tone where I was pushing the distorted channel with the overdrive. Now, I used that same setting for the little kind of melodic figure, that pedal tone figure that I played in harmony. I used that same tone for the first guitar solo as well as the outro solo. But after the first solo, there was like a sort of pedaling riff that I played in harmony. First time round on its own, second time in harmony. I wanted to get a little bit more of a thicker tone for that section. So I opted for experimenting, pushing the distortion into the overdrive. So I really tried to use as many different combinations and settings with the pedal that I could within the track. Okay, so let's just talk about the signal chain and then we get to having a listen to the kind of raw tones, if you like. I'm using this rather stunning Ernie Ball Music Man Axis, and this is one of the BFR limited edition ones with the nice purple back and the nitro finish. We're running obviously into the pedal and then we're going into the Friedman Plex. I'm going into the low input so that I can get a little bit more of a cleaner tone out of it. I'm also on the low voltage setting. There's like a variac setting, so it's a little bit spongier and a little bit tighter. I'm then running into the wall from the speaker output, and that takes me directly into the control room in my studio. I've just had the studio rewired just before Christmas, so a lot of stuff that was sort of there that wasn't hooked up properly is now being beautifully connected by my buddy Göran at a company here in Sweden called Sound of Silence. He does a lot of studio installation. He builds my pedal boards and such, but he really redesigned the studio to really be optimized for recording guitar. So we're coming out of the Friedman into a custom box that's on the wall, and that feeds directly into my Two Notes Torpedo Studio, which is an older piece of Two Notes kit that I bought years ago, but I absolutely love it. And so I have now reintroduced that into the setup. I'm using one of the official Friedman Dyne IRs. I can't remember what speakers it is, but it's that famous speaker cabinet that Dave Friedman uses that has no finish on it, the bare wood one. And I'm using a ribbon microphone and an SM57, so a dynamic microphone. Going into the UAD, and I have an API plug-in on there where I'm just taming a little bit of the low end. I'm shelving some low end and rolling off a little bit around 200, as well as just pulling the mid-range down a little bit around 500, just so I've got a very even EQ. So it's hopefully the amp is not adding too much of its unique character to the sound of the pedal. Let's have a listen to my guitar sound. It's kind of clean-ish. It's very hard to get a completely clean sound out of one of these amps. If you back down the volume. Okay, so as you can hear, it's quite a neutral sound. That's what I mean. I've just tried to control the EQ of the amplifier and not have loads of woofy low end, which I think would do the pedal an injustice. So let's kick off. We've got all the controls in the middle. I've got the character switches over. Let's have a listen to the overdrive. Let's experiment a little bit with the gain control. Let's start to push it up. All the way up. If I push the volume up slightly, it will start hitting the front of the amp a bit more. And that really affects the sound of the pedal as well. Sometimes that's quite a cool thing to do when you're using a valve amplifier. By just pushing the output up slightly, you start to push the amp a bit more. But I've tried to keep it a little bit more neutral, so that you're hearing the pedal. Let's turn the tone control all the way down. Start to bring that up. So I've set the level and the tone control back in the middle, and we've turned the gain all the way down. We're still on the overdrive channel. Okay, so now I've got the gain control set back in the middle, and let's compare the sound of the pedal when I kick in the character control. Now straight away you'll notice a level drop there. That's because it's compressing slightly. Experiment with the tone control a little bit. That sounds really cool. I like the tone of it when you kick in that character switch. As I said, you have to increase the level a little bit because of the compression. So just wind the level up to kind of match it to where it was without the switch in. But what it does, it makes it a bit tighter, a little bit spongier, and it increases the gain ever so slightly. It's a really tight 80s Marshall style tone. Now onto the distortion channel. This is based on that classic Mesa Boogie Mark II, Mark III distortion. So let's engage that channel. Okay, straight away you can hear a little bit more bark to the channel with all the controls set in the middle. Push the gain. The interesting thing about this channel is the way that the tone is voiced. If you start to pull the tone control down a bit, from the middle down ever so slightly, you start to hear how it affects the mid-range. A really, really good sound. the gain down. Sounds great. It's a really, really nice distortion there. It's not too saturated. It doesn't get too compressed when you start to turn it up. It's got... still got definition to it. Okay, so I've now set the level and the tone pretty much in the middle. We pushed the gain up a little bit. Let's just back that tone down. As you can hear, it's just sort of affecting the mid-range, scooping it slightly. Let's now kick in the character switch and listen to what that does to the mid-range. There's a big difference there when you kick that character switch in. You can hear how it's really sort of lifting the mid-range. I'm not too sure which one I prefer. Probably with the mid-range is going to be a lot better for your leads. And as I said, I sort of thought I had that switch down when I was recording, but then after I kind of got into it a bit more, I was like, I wish I'd sort of tweaked the tone a little bit more like this. So it really is one of those pedals that the more you experiment with it, the more you will get out of it. Okay, so I've reset everything pretty much in the center. And what we're now going to do to wrap things up, just have a listen to some examples of stacking the two channels together. So our distortion channel, our overdrive channel, and now let's stack them together. At the moment, the overdrive, I've got that little switch, the order switch, switched over so that the distortion is feeding into, the overdrive is feeding into distortion. So we're pushing the distortion with the overdrive. Now, one thing you do have to do is experiment a little bit. Oops, I've just moved the pedal. That's going to look really good on the video. We have to experiment a little bit with the levels, making sure that you are introducing enough of the signal of the pedal of the channel, that's pushing into the other one. I got my shirt caught on my whammy bar. There wasn't some kind of cool technique. Sounds really cool. Let's now try stacking the other way. So now what we're going to do is we are going to, if I can, there we go. We're now going to push the distortion the other way. We're going to push that into the overdrive. I could go on for a long time just noodling around. This is the part of the demos that I always don't enjoy because I never really know what to play. But hopefully that gives you an idea of the different sounds that you can create when you stack the two sides of the pedal together, either the overdrive into the distortion or the distortion into the overdrive. You can create some very unique and different sounding types of drive. Okay, so there you have it, the Golden Jubilee pedal from Wampler. I think this is a really fun pedal. Two really usable independent channels that, of course, can be stacked, utilizing the characteristics of high-gain British amps as well as high-gain American amps. Great for creating some 80s tones. So click the link in the description to find out more about the pedal. And yeah, hope you enjoyed this demo. If you don't already, please subscribe. That's it from me, and I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.